Hello everyone, welcome back to The Deep Dive. I'm your host, Sydney Adiancio, and today we're diving into Chapter 7 of The Giver. Okay, so previously we talked about Chapters 5 and 6, and we talked about emotional suppression as not a standalone effect, but as a symptom, or rather a tool of the type of society that everyone in this community lives in. And I called it a survival society, and I compared it to the Puritans in Salem and mentioned how, the most likely reason why they had this rigid structure, why the Puritans had a rigid structure, was because they were worried about threats. They were worried about, different threats, people coming and attacking them in the middle of the night, and they had to protect themselves. Now, the community in The Giver also has to protect themselves, but they're not worried about someone coming and attacking them in the middle of the night. Rather, they are worried about their very society collapsing because it appears to have been created out of desperation. Now, in Chapter 7, we go to the Ceremony of the 12s, which, if you guys remember from previous chapters, the characters in The Giver do not have regular birthdays. They have age ceremonies, which means on a set date every year, there is a ceremony where each age group ages up, and that is when you become that age. So, for all we know, Jonas may not be 11. In fact, he might be a couple years off from that, because if you remember, some of the babies are already walking by the time they reach Ceremony of the Ones, and others are still wrapped in blankets. Others are still babies. And so it very well could be that Jonas is actually 14. It could be that he's 10. He could be anywhere around the age of 11, but again, we do not know this information because they do not explicitly state this in the book. But in this chapter, in Chapter 7, we see the Ceremony of the 12s. Now, the Ceremony of the 12s is different than all the other ceremonies, because the other ceremonies symbolize going up in age, while the Ceremony of the 12s symbolizes not only going up in age, but being an adult, for one, and for two, getting your future assigned career. Now, Jonas mentions a couple of the names that were assigned. There was a girl named Inger who was assigned to be a birth mother, and Jonas remembers his mother saying that this was a worthless job, that this job didn't have any meaning, because if you remember, with birth mothers, they are pampered for 3 years, and then they are assigned to be laborers. And we remember that the community looks down upon the laborers, that they say that they didn't have any worth. If you remember when Jonas was bathing Larissa, how she was kind of talking about another lady who was a birth mother and saying that she didn't think she was very smart. But Inger is assigned as a birth mother because she is known for being sweet and sensitive, yet also known for, according to many of her peers, laziness. And they say she has a strong body, though. So they say that these things are perfect for birth mother. Now, of course, everyone kind of has an idea of what assignments some people are going to receive, because the community, I'm pretty sure, taught these kids in school or the child care center, whatever you want to call it, taught these kids that different traits apply to different people in different trades. And if you remember, this was not mentioned again in this chapter, but I am going to mention it again. If you decide you do not like your assignment, you will be released. Now, again, we do not know what release means yet, but I'm sure you guys can make a prediction, use your imagination. And if you have already read The Giver, please do not spoil it in the comments, because we are not even there yet. But if you remember from previous chapters, you did not like your assignment, you could be released. Now, being released, I will say, we do not know what it is yet, but being released essentially means that you are no longer of worth to the community. So people who hear this, I'm sure, have mixed feelings. Some people think that release is a symbol of honor, while other people think that it is a symbol of hatred, and that being released means that the community is discarding them, which I would believe that the latter is more true. But another girl is assigned as fish hatchery attendant. Now, Jonas is happy that this assignment was taken because, remember, the community looks down upon laborers, and he is, I'm assuming, happy that he does not want to be a laborer, or that he's not being assigned as a laborer. Now, at the end, he realizes that they skipped his number. They skipped Jonas's number, and Jonas is getting a little nervous. Now, I'm not going to spoil what is going to happen in the next chapter, but what I will say is that the reason they skipped his number was because they wanted to talk about his assignment in private. Now, I'm only saying this to increase clarity, to make it very clear, because in the next chapter, we're going to get into some of this. But let's spend some time talking about the ceremony of the 12s and the humiliation of the ceremony of the 12s. Now, the community tells everyone who attends the ceremony of 12s that this is the one day that their differences will be honored and that they do not have to fit in. Now, how exactly are differences honored? Now, let's go back to the point in the chapter where Asher is standing and the chief of the elders is kind of stalling, giving his assignment, telling his story, and she tells Asher that she would not assign him to be an instructor of threes because instructors of threes have to correct precision in language. Now, I do not think that this is the exact reason. I honestly believe that she is saying all this to humiliate him just because she sees the perfect opening, but she tells a story about how when Asher was 3, he had a difficult time distinguishing the word snack from smack. And if he got words wrong, he would get smacked on the legs repeatedly with something called the discipline wand. Now, I can't remember if we've talked about this much in previous chapters, but the discipline wand is essentially a long stick that is used to correct bad behavior, that is used to hit kids with who do not behave properly. Now, the discipline wand, I also believe, is another mechanism of psychological manipulation, emotional manipulation, emotional suppression, because the way it works, because remember, she mentions that after a while, Asher finally stopped talking. And when Asher stopped talking, he was silent for a while, but she said at least he learned. So again, this is meant to also alter the state of thinking of people, because we know that in the past, people who were repeatedly beaten tend to exhibit fear, because anytime you inflict physical pain on someone as part of a punishment, you are instilling a state of fear. You are teaching that person that they must walk on eggshells or be fearful of your beating. And that is essentially what this discipline wand is doing. It is another mechanism of emotional manipulation, keeping everyone in line. And the reason that the chief elder told this story, my prediction is that they tell a story like this every year during the ceremony of 12s to remind the children that they are being watched, remind the children that there are embarrassing moments, yet embarrassing moments that they have curbed, that they have kept in their heads, that they have avoided thinking about, talking about. And so I think it is just a reminder to everyone that the community isn't necessarily as uniform as we think it is, yet the community structure is designed to pick and keep favorites, or maybe not even favorites, but people who the community pays special attention to. That way everyone knows to behave themselves so they don't get that special attention paid to them. Now, I don't realistically think that they're paying special attention to anyone. My honest analysis of this is that they probably pick one person every year to humiliate, to tell a story about, because I think that with the snack versus smack situation being such a minuscule, small thing that, could very well happen in anyone's childhood, that the community elders could have very easily shrugged off, it makes it seem as if they picked Asher at random as the person to humiliate. Now, this was sort of a short chapter, but in the next episode, we will be discussing chapter 8. Let me know if you have any thoughts in the comments. And good news, our Spotify comments are open now, so you no longer have to fill out a Google form to leave a comment. Just drop it in the comments on Spotify. And thanks for listening to The Deep Dive with Sydney Nadiancio.